Greetings, everyone, and welcome to the Occult Think Tank. My name is Greg. In this program, I am going to talk about how Christians like to act like they're persecuted, but the truth of the matter is, this picture really nails the aspect of they want to act like they're the ones that have someone having a boot on their head, but if you look at it, they're the ones that actually have the boot on their head trying to pretend to be the victim, when really they're the one that's trying to perpetrate a hoax. Because the truth of the matter is, they want to act as if you can't question authority or their religion or their God figure. They oppose questions just like a tyrannical dictator. The thing is, if there would be something, to use the term, higher than us, I had said when I was younger, I felt as if I was guided by something. And I want to talk about that for a little bit, because there are some things that never happened during the time that I felt like I was being guided. The biggest thing that never happened was I was never told what to think. All whatever was guiding me would do would ask me questions, and it would be up to me to determine the path that I would take. Like the first question being, at the age of 18, who are you going to follow, us or the church? And that led me to going and talking to the pastor of a church, which, when he got upset at my question of what he actually believed, I wrote off churches on contact at that point. That was very easy for me to make a decision regarding whatever was guiding me and the church, because what I saw from the church was a authoritarian type of don't question, don't ask me anything type of thing. And it turned me off completely. Then a few years later, it was, who were you going to follow, us or Jesus? Which was tougher because of all the programming that I had undergone as a child and the indoctrination into Christianity. And I struggled with that question for a good 6 months, and I was at an impasse. I couldn't make a decision of that nature. So the question changed, and it was one of, even if you would be accepted into heaven, could you go along with the torture of somebody else just because they don't believe like you? That was actually easier, because I thought about it, and I thought about it very seriously. And I realized very quickly, no. For good or for ill, the answer to that question was a resounding hell no. I cannot go along with the torture of somebody else for any reason. The thing is, that was back in the early 90s. And shortly after I had walked away from Christianity, I think it was around the 9/11 type of thing, that the issue of Guantanamo Bay came up, and the idea of terrorists being essentially tortured at Guantanamo Bay, and the justification that was done to try and justify they are terrorists, so that makes torturing them okay. No, it doesn't. Torture is not a reliable means of extracting information. It just doesn't work, because anybody that is tortured will get to a point where they'll tell the torturer anything that they feel the torturer wants to hear to stop the torture. It is something that I knew even before 9/11 that the aspect of torture is wrong, period. The disturbing part with that was the number of Christians that can make an excuse and go along with the torture and subjugation of those not like them. I don't give a damn what somebody is accused of doing. Torturing them is unacceptable. If we are going to be a country of law and so forth, we can't put that law and morals aside in the idea of terrorism. It makes me think of a Gwar song of "You can't kill terror." And it's true, you can't. The idea of terrorists is a vague label that could apply to anybody. Anybody that doesn't fit the status quo. And if you have that you can ignore human rights because of a label that you put on somebody, that label can be put on anybody. You, me, anybody. And the fact that Christians can go along with, I'm not saying all, but a disturbing number of them appear to have no problem with the idea of torture. I have a great deal of respect for Christopher Hitchens, and there is a reason I have a lot of respect for him beyond the fact that he was a very outspoken atheist. The biggest thing that caused me to respect Christopher Hitchens was he let himself be waterboarded. He let himself go through that. On the videos on YouTube, some of you may have seen it, which where they're actually he's holding a metal cylinder, and all he had to do is drop it and they would stop. He had said afterward, not only did he drop it, he threw it. And he had said afterward, yes, that is torture. It's something that those that want to talk about how it's acceptable and so forth, they want to run their mouth and act like because they're quote-unquote terrorists, that makes it okay, but they're not willing to go through it themselves. They want to try and act like, oh, it's not that bad, but they won't go through it themselves. I have no respect for that. If you want to try and act and poo-poo something like waterboarding, have the balls to go through it yourself and then say that. Because I suspect, like in the case with Christopher Hitchens, after going through that, your ideas regarding it would radically change. Because the thing of the matter is, none of us know if a God or whatnot would exist. There's no way for us to definitively know. I do suspect whatever had guided me when I was younger, I don't think it was guiding me towards quote-unquote atheism, but rather to thinking for myself and making my own decisions. Perhaps because I had people telling me back when I was 18 that I should be a minister. And I did the praying about it type of thing, and I felt very clearly no, your path is in another direction. I wasn't told what that direction was, but it was a very clear, basically the aspect of being a minister, even though my grandfather was a Lutheran minister. And I have the ability to articulate my thoughts very clearly. And if I would have wanted to, yes, I could have done the basically keeping the Christian hat on type of thing. But I think if I had gone that route against the advice of whatever was guiding me, I would have run into a problem of having to tout a message that I don't really believe. And I'm not going to do that because that, to me, would make what I would be saying fake. And I won't do that. But the thing is, I have heard different New Age ideas of, and you may have heard ideas like this, and I'll toss it out there, not that I per se believe it, but only that I've heard these ideas and it seems interesting. That being that when a person dies, they are encountering what are termed beings of light and so forth, and that there are beings or entities that never take human form, and that there is a gathering that after a person's life there is a review of the things that they went through and so forth, and that there's even the idea of before going into a particular life that a person will make an agreement with whatever for whatever mission or objective that their life is supposed to have. I have issues with that idea because it raises the question in my mind, why would somebody willingly enter into a life where they're going to be brutalized by someone else, especially children that are brutalized and so forth and die at a very young age? What could possibly be learned or gained from something like that? I don't know. But I've heard the idea that there's, even in what would be a dark situation, that there can be good that comes out of it. I have problems seeing that because I don't see what is good about somebody going through a life that is essentially a living hell. I don't buy the whole karma idea because that seems to me to be a punishing the victim type of thing. Even if somebody, to use the prior life type of thing, even if somebody was like a Hitler in a prior life, for them to go through another life where they are brutalized, they don't remember the life before, so what possible good can come from their being brutalized? I would say maybe if we would have memories of a prior life and so forth, maybe then something like that could serve a purpose. But because we don't have that knowledge, I don't see where there's any thing to be gained by it. It just seems that it's a way to try and whitewash horrible situations. And I don't feel that horrible situations should be swept under the rug and dismissed so flippantly by trying to act like, well, they deserved it because of a prior life that nobody can prove actually happened. Now, I had thought about wouldn't it be ironic if somebody that was a member of the Klan would be reincarnated as someone that's black? That would be irony. Or someone that's homophobic would be reincarnated as somebody that's gay. That I would see as mildly ironic. But it would also seem a bit sadistic, because the person would not retain the knowledge. And some that buy into this New Age type of idea may try to say that the soul or whatever would retain that knowledge. There's no way to prove that. That also is, I see, as a type of whitewash. And because we can't prove that hypothesis, these New Age ideas, while they may sound good, and like I had said, those things that I had mentioned, they would be ironic. But I don't see where it would ultimately serve any purpose. Because I didn't have to, as far as I know, I've never had a life of being in the Klan or being black or being gay, but I can still empathize. My ability to empathize is not determined by had I gone through something. There is something to be said for personal experience in things, but you don't have to go through everything in order to be able to empathize with somebody and say, I wouldn't want to go through that. And if somebody can turn a blind eye to the suffering of others because they don't think like you, I see that as a problem and a character flaw in the person. Not the one that, quote unquote, is being tortured, but the one that goes along with it and makes an excuse for, well, they deserve that because of whatever bullshit excuse they want to come up with. That is what has me with so many Christians that buy into this hellfire and damnation bullshit. It makes me feel that they're lacking in morals and ethics, and they want to try and use an authoritarian God can do what God wants because God is God type of mindset. The problem with that is we are getting close to where we could have AI, artificial intelligence, that is self-aware. And the minute you create life, especially like an AI, something that has its own mind, you do not have the right to dictate what thoughts or behaviors that one will do. There is what is in our society and our laws. And absolutely we have to have that if somebody breaks one of our laws, that we have ways of punishing people, even if it means removing them from society. But as far as dictating, you have to think X because I made you, no. That's tyrannical. Just because you give someone life or give something life does not mean you have the right to dictate what they do with that life. And that is where the same applies with children and so forth. But the authoritarian religious idea of, and it goes back to the idea of like the Abraham and Isaac, of God telling Abraham to kill his son. That is a horrible thing. And there's no evidence that either of those people ever actually existed. But let's say, for the sake of hypotheticals, that they did. Even though the God stopped that from happening, that child, Isaac, would still be emotionally scarred for life because of looking at their father and being, he's going to kill me. That would cause emotional damage that would not be able to be repaired. And the idea that the religious can just excuse it with, well, God stopped it. They're not grasping the emotional and psychological damage that that act would have had in and of itself. And that damage cannot be washed away or magically taken away because it didn't happen. And that's the type of whitewash that religion tries to give. It's disgusting. And the way that the religious can just excuse behavior that I would regard as absolutely deplorable, and that they can go along with it because it, quote unquote, comes from their God. It shows not only is their God an immoral thug, they're an immoral thug. It is not something that should be admired. But feel free to leave your thoughts and comments in the comment section. Talk to you later, people.